Eryx had always kept his heart guarded, careful with who he let in. Then Kairen arrived, loud, magnetic, impossible to ignore. And Vaelen, quiet, intense, utterly commanding. Two best friends. One boy. Jealousy, rivalry, tension. What started as teasing and possessiveness quickly spiraled into desire. A fire Eryx couldn't resist. He wanted both of them, and they wanted him. This is the story of how rivalry became obsession, and obsession became shared passion, dangerous, consuming, and impossible to escape. Eryx always hated first days, not because he feared people, but because people always seemed unsure of what to make of him. He was soft-spoken, gentle in a way that made others underestimate him, yet distant in ways they couldn't fully understand. He walked into the new classroom quietly, backpack hugged close, eyes scanning for a desk that didn't place too much attention on him. He didn't expect two boys to notice him instantly. Vaelen noticed him first. He was leaning against a desk, long fingers tapping a slow rhythm, half listening to a conversation he wasn't interested in. His eyes drifted lazily across the room until they caught on Eryx. His tapping stopped. His jaw tightened just slightly, like something inside him had been pulled taut without warning. He didn't know the boy. He hadn't seen him before. But the moment Eryx looked up and their eyes met, something in Vaelen sharpened, quiet, focused, almost magnetic. Eryx felt it too. He blinked, startled, looking away quickly. And that tiny reaction was enough to pull Vaelen's attention deeper. But before Vaelen could take a step toward him, someone else appeared in Eryx's line of sight. Kairen. He arrived with noise, laughing, slinging his bag onto a chair, brushing past groups like he owned the air around him. He was bold, sharp around the edges, the type who walked into a room and immediately bent the mood his way. His eyes wandered, searching for something interesting. They stopped the moment they landed on Eryx. Eryx looked back at him for a second. Soft eyes, nervous fingers, a small inhale like he wasn't used to being stared at. And Kairen's entire expression shifted. Amusement first, then interest, then something fiercer that he didn't bother to hide. Vaelen saw it. Kairen saw Vaelen seeing it, and the air grew tight instantly. Kairen smirked at Vaelen. Found something you like? Vaelen didn't answer. He stepped toward Eryx instead. Kairen followed. Eryx froze when two tall figures approached him at the same time, each radiating a different kind of intensity. Vaelen, cold and quiet. Kairen, warm and reckless. You're new, Vaelen said, voice smooth, low, a little too direct for a stranger. Eryx nodded. Yeah, today's my first day. Kairen leaned one elbow on Eryx's desk. Too close, too confident. You got a name? Eryx. He said it softly, and Kairen's lips curled like he liked how it sounded. Vaelen's gaze didn't move from Eryx's face. Sit with us. It wasn't a question. Eryx blinked. Ah, is that okay? Yes, Vaelen said. With both of us, Kairen added quickly, nudging Vaelen's shoulder with a competitive glare. Vaelen didn't step back. Kairen didn't back off either. Eryx suddenly felt like he was standing between two storms that had just realized they were colliding. They led him to a last row, one seat, and two boys who stood like they were waiting for him to choose who to sit closer to. Eryx hesitated. Kairen slid into the left seat, patting the spot beside him. Come here. You'll see the board better. Vaelen quietly sat on the right. He can see fine from either side. Kairen shot him a look. You trying to steal him already? Vaelen tilted his head slightly. Already? Did you claim him? Eryx's heart skipped hard. Kairen grinned, leaning closer to Eryx. Maybe I did. Vaelen's gaze flickered, sharp, cold, possessive, in a way that didn't match his usual quietness. You can't claim someone you just met. You're jealous, Kairen said, simply. Vaelen didn't deny it. Eryx swallowed, unsure if he should intervene or stay silent. He sat down slowly, right between them. Vaelen shifted closer without touching him. Kairen leaned in, just enough to brush Eryx's arm. Both noticed the tiny flinch Eryx made. Both liked it for different reasons. The teacher's voice cut through the tension, but neither Vaelen nor Kairen looked away from Eryx for several seconds. He felt both their gazes burning into him. Observing, wanting, competing without speaking. When class ended, another group of boys, loud, careless, approached Eryx. "Hey, new kid," one said, eyeing him openly. "You're kinda cute. Want us to show you around?" Eryx stiffened immediately. Vaelen stood up slowly. Kairen stood up faster. "He's with us," Kairen said first, voice flat and dangerous. Vaelen's shoulders relaxed, like he'd been waiting for an excuse to lash out. "Walk away." The boys hesitated, but backed off. Eryx watched them leave, his heart pounding. "Thank you," he whispered. Kairen turned to him with a warm grin. "You're ours. We take care of what's ours." Vaelen's voice dropped to something darker. "He means you're safe with us. That's all." But Kairen smirked, knowing Vaelen meant the same thing even if he said it differently. Eryx didn't know whether to feel relieved or more nervous, because being wanted was new to him. Being wanted by two at the same time was overwhelming. And the way Vaelen and Kairen looked at him made one thing very clear. Neither planned to back down. Neither planned to let the other win, and neither had realized yet that Eryx was starting to want both of them back. The rivalry had already begun, and Eryx had become the center of it without meaning to. Eryx expected the tension to fade by the end of the school day. He expected Vaelen to lose interest. He expected Kairen to get distracted by someone else. But neither boy drifted away from him, not for a moment. They followed him through every period, walking on either side of him like silent shadows with very different kinds of presence. Eryx could feel their eyes on him whenever he sat, whenever he spoke, whenever someone else approached him. And by the time the final bell rang, he already knew there was no escaping them. Vaelen was the first to ask, "Where do you live?" Eryx blinked, surprised. "Just a few blocks from here." Kairen tilted his head. "Alone?" "My aunt," Eryx said quietly. "My parents travel a lot." Kairen softened instantly. "So you're alone most of the time?" Eryx nodded. Vaelen's jaw tightened. "We'll walk you home." "It's fine," Eryx said quickly. "You don't have to." "We're walking you home," Vaelen repeated, calm but firm. Kairen smirked. "He's not asking." Eryx sighed softly, but didn't argue further. Something inside him warmed. Unwanted, unfamiliar, dangerous. They walked down the street in silence for a while. Vaelen's steps were controlled and quiet. Kairen's were loud, confident, matching his grin. Eryx walked between them, feeling like they were both scanning every corner for trouble. It was too much attention. Too intense. Too confusing. "Do you do this to every new student?" Eryx asked finally. "No," Vaelen said without hesitation. "We barely look at other people," Kairen added. "And why me?" Eryx asked softly. Kairen slowed his steps, turning to look at him. "Do you want the truth?" Eryx nodded. "Because you looked at us like you didn't expect anything from us," Kairen said. "Most people look at me with interest or fear. You didn't." "I liked it." Vaelen's eyes remained on the path ahead. "You're quiet, without being afraid. That's rare." Eryx felt his cheeks heat slightly. "I just don't like being stared at." Vaelen glanced at him with a barely noticeable smirk. "Then today must be difficult." Kairen laughed. "He's saying we're staring." Eryx looked down at his feet. "You are." "So," Kairen teased. "So stop." "No," Vaelen said simply. Eryx nearly tripped. "You can't just say no." "I can," Vaelen said. "And I did." Kairen threw his arm around Eryx's shoulder without warning. "Ignore him. He's obsessed." Vaelen shot him a glare. "I'm observant." "Obsessive," Kairen corrected. "Focused." "Territorial." Vaelen shrugged. "Call it whatever you want." Eryx was caught between wanting to pull away and wanting to stay exactly where he was. Their warmth pressed against him from both sides. He felt like he was being pulled into two different currents, one cool and controlled, the other warm and reckless. When they reached his apartment gate, Eryx stepped back. "Thank you for walking me." Kairen leaned against the gate, looking up. "We're doing it tomorrow too." Eryx blinked. What? Vaelen nodded. "Every day." "That's not necessary." "It is for us," Vaelen said calmly. "Unless you don't want us to," Kairen added, his tone suddenly softer. Eryx hesitated. He didn't want to push them away. He didn't want them to leave. He was just scared of what they wanted. "I don't mind," he whispered. Kairen's grin widened. Good. Vaelen's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes softened slightly. Before Eryx could retreat inside, someone called out from across the street. Eryx! A neighbor boy, older, tall, smiling too brightly, waved and jogged over. Kairen's expression darkened. Vaelen's shoulders tensed. The boy stopped beside Eryx. Haven't seen you in a while. Need help with the boxes your aunt brought? Eryx's face lit up a little. Oh, thank you, but I can manage. Kairen stepped forward, inserting himself between them. He said he can manage. The neighbor blinked, confused. Who are you? Someone he knows, Kairen said coldly. Vaelen didn't speak. He just stared at the boy like he was deciding whether or not he was a threat. The boy raised his hands in surrender. Okay. Didn't know he came with bodyguards? Eryx's cheeks burned. They're just friends, he said quickly. Vaelen looked at him. Are we? The question felt heavier than it should have. Eryx swallowed. Yes? Kairen's smirk returned. Good. Then your friend can walk away. The neighbor rolled his eyes and left with a muttered, okay, possessive much. Kairen's brows lifted. He's right. Vaelen didn't deny it. Eryx stared at both of them, stunned. You can't act like that with people I know. We can, Vaelen said. And we will, Kairen added. And why? Eryx whispered. Vaelen's voice was quiet but honest. Because we don't like anyone else touching you. Kairen took a step closer, eyes dark. Or looking at you. Eryx's breath hitched. We're not even... Yet, Kairen interrupted. Eryx froze. Vaelen leaned forward just slightly. Go inside, Eryx, before we say something we shouldn't. Eryx hurried through the gate, heart racing, closing it behind him. He didn't turn around, but he could feel their eyes on his back, burning, claiming, pulling. And he knew one thing with absolute certainty. Whatever was growing between them wasn't stopping, it was only getting stronger. Eryx didn't sleep easily that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Vaelen's quiet intensity, Kairen's dangerous smile, the way they stood in front of him like they were ready to fight anyone who dared to get close. He didn't know what he was supposed to feel. He didn't even know what he was allowed to feel. He had never been the center of anyone's attention before, and now he had two boys looking at him like he mattered more than he should. When the morning came, he almost convinced himself they wouldn't be waiting. But the moment he stepped outside his gate, there they were. Vaelen leaning against a lamppost, cold morning light brushing his hair. Kairen sitting on his bike, tapping his fingers impatiently. They both straightened when they saw him. Kairen hopped off immediately. You took long. Eryx blinked. It's 7:30. Exactly, Kairen grinned. I was bored. Vaelen stepped closer, eyes scanning Eryx quietly. You didn't eat breakfast. Eryx stiffened. How did you know? You look pale, Vaelen said. Kairen raised a bag triumphantly. I brought something. He shoved a warm pastry into Eryx's hands. Eat. Eryx looked between them, overwhelmed. You really don't have to do all this. We know, Kairen said, softer. But we want to. Vaelen didn't say anything out loud, but the way he looked at Eryx said enough. They walked to school again, Eryx in the center, like always, and every time someone looked at Eryx too long, Kairen's hand would brush against Eryx's lower back lightly, almost teasing. Every time someone tried to talk to him, Vaelen would appear silently behind Eryx, towering just enough to send them away. Eryx wasn't used to being protected. He wasn't used to being wanted. By lunch, he finally asked, Why are you both doing this? Kairen looked at him like it was obvious. Because we want you. Vaelen added, And you don't stop us. Eryx blushed, looking away. I don't know what to do with both of you. Kairen leaned closer. You don't have to pick. Eryx's breath hitched. What? Vaelen spoke quietly. If you like us both, that's not something we'd fight you for. Eryx stared at Vaelen, stunned. But you two fight constantly. For everything else, Kairen said. Not for you. Vaelen nodded slightly. We're rivals, but that doesn't mean we can't want the same thing. Eryx was speechless. He didn't know what to say, what to think, what to feel. All he knew was that Kairen's thumb, tracing small circles on his wrist, was making his heart beat too fast. And Vaelen's gaze on his lips wasn't helping either. But reality snapped back when someone else approached their table again. A boy from class holding worksheets. Eryx, can you help me with yesterday's homework? Eryx opened his mouth, Oh, sure, I can. Kairen's hand closed around his wrist, gently but firmly. He's busy. Valen's eyes darkened. Ask someone else. The boy frowned. What's your problem? I just asked him for help. He said he's busy, Vaelen repeated, voice lower. Eryx pulled his hand free, stepping forward. It's okay, I can help. Karen's jaw clenched. Why him? Eryx raised his chin a little. Because he asked. Valen's eyes sharpened, but he didn't argue. He only said, we'll wait. Eryx walked to the side of the cafeteria with the boy, explaining the worksheet. But halfway through, he could feel two heavy stares burning holes into his back. He turned a little. Kairen looked like he wanted to burn the table they were at. Vaelen looked like he wanted to burn the boy. Eryx hurried through the explanation and returned to their table. Kairen leaned forward instantly. Did he touch you? Eryx sighed. He asked me about homework. Valen's voice was soft but firm. You don't have to help anyone who makes you uncomfortable. He didn't, Eryx insisted. Kairen smirked. But we did. Eryx froze. What? You left, Kairen said simply. That was uncomfortable for us. Vaelen didn't deny it. Don't leave like that again. At least tell us. Eryx stared at them, incredulous. You two are impossible. Kairen grinned. But you're still here. Vaelen looked at him steadily. And you're still choosing us. Eryx didn't respond. But his silence was enough. After school, they walked him home again. This time, Eryx didn't try to argue. He didn't pretend he didn't like it. He walked slower, letting their shoulders brush his. Feeling their presence settle into him, deeper than he intended. But when they reached his gate, something happened he didn't expect. Kairen tilted his head. Tomorrow, can we come inside? Eryx's breath caught. Why? To see where you spend your time, Kairen smirked. To know you better, Vaelen added. Eryx swallowed hard. Both of you? At the same time, Kairen said. Vaelen didn't blink. Unless you don't want us. Eryx's heart pounded painfully. He looked at them, one warm, one cold, both intense, both wanting him in ways he wasn't ready to understand. But the truth came out before he could stop it. Okay. Valen's eyes softened. Kairen's smile grew razor sharp. Eryx hurried inside, slamming the gate behind him, heart racing. He pressed his back to the door, breathing hard, as he heard their footsteps slowly fade away. He whispered to himself, trembling, what am I getting myself into? He already knew the answer. Something dangerous, something heated, something that none of them would walk away from. Eryx opened the door the next afternoon, with hands that wouldn't stay still. He had cleaned the small living room twice, rearranged the cushions 3 times, and stood in front of the mirror longer than he ever had in his life. He didn't know why he cared this much, why the idea of Vaelen and Kairen stepping into his home made his chest feel tight and electric. But he cared, and that scared him. A knock came, sharp, confident. That was Kairen. The second knock, softer, measured. That was Vaelen. Eryx inhaled shakily and pulled the door open. Both boys looked different today. Not in clothes, not in posture, but in intention. Kairen leaned against the doorframe, eyes dragging slowly over Eryx in a way that made his spine tingle. You look cute when you're nervous. Vaelen didn't smile, but his gaze softened enough to make Eryx feel warm. May we come in? Eryx stepped aside, heartbeat pounding as they entered. Kairen walked in like he belonged there. Vaelen walked in like he was memorizing everything. Eryx quietly shut the door behind them. Kairen dropped onto the couch, sprawling like he owned half the room. Vaelen took the armchair, posture straight, eyes following Eryx wherever he moved. Eryx hovered near the edge of the couch. Water? Snacks? Anything? We want you, Kairen said without hesitation. Eryx's breath caught. Kairen, Valen's voice cut in, calm but firm. He means your company. Kairen tilted his head. Mostly. Eryx glared weakly, but it did nothing. Kairen only grinned wider. He sat down between them, because there was nowhere else to sit. Kairen immediately draped his arm across the back of the couch behind Eryx's shoulders. Vaelen didn't move, but the air around him felt charged, focused. Eryx swallowed. You two said you wanted to know me better. We do, Vaelen said. So talk. Anything. Eryx blinked. What do you want to know? Everything, Kairen said instantly. Eryx picked a safer question. Why did you come here together? Doesn't it bother you two that you like the same person? Kairen smirked. We compete for everything. This is nothing new. Vaelen's gaze flickered toward Kairen. It's different. Eryx's chest tightened. Different how? Vaelen looked directly at him. Because it's you. Kairen's grin faded a little. Just a fraction. Like Vaelen's honesty had hit him somewhere he didn't expect. That's exactly why, Kairen said quietly. We're not letting jealousy screw this up. Not this. Eryx froze. They weren't teasing, they weren't playing. This was real. He didn't know how to breathe for a moment. Kairen leaned forward, brushing a thumb under Eryx's jaw, tilting it slightly. See? You get shy when we're serious. Vaelen murmured, you gets overwhelmed. Eryx shook his head, whispering, I'm not used to attention, or compliments, or this. Kairen smiled softer this time. Then we'll go slow. Vaelen nodded, we won't rush you. Eryx started to relax, until Kairen tugged him gently by the wrist, pulling him closer so their knees touched. Vaelen didn't pull him back, but the look he gave Kairen wasn't neutral. Kairen noticed. What? I'm not doing anything. You're doing something, Vaelen said. I'm sitting, Kairen shot back. Too close. It's his couch, Kairen said smugly. Eryx pressed a hand over his face. Can you two not fight for 1 minute? Both boys went silent at the exact same time. Then Kairen whispered, almost sheepish, We're trying. Vaelen added, We are. Eryx peeked through his fingers. Really? Vaelen nodded. Kairen exhaled dramatically. Yes, Eryx, we're being civilized. Eryx lowered his hand and almost laughed, but the sound died when Vaelen reached out slowly, brushing a piece of hair behind Eryx's ear. The touch was gentle, careful. Too careful. Eryx shivered. Kairen's eyes darkened. He liked that. Vaelen didn't deny it. Of course he did. Kairen leaned in too, his thigh pressing against Eryx's. Can I try something? Eryx's heart jumped. Like what? Just this. Kairen placed his hand over Eryx's, fingers weaving lightly through his. Eryx sucked in a small breath. Vaelen's jaw tightened, but he didn't pull Eryx away. Instead, he leaned closer, voice low and steady in Eryx's ear. Tell us when anything becomes too much. Eryx nodded, unable to speak for a moment. Kairen's thumb stroked the thin skin over Eryx's knuckles. Vaelen's breath brushed the side of Eryx's neck. Eryx felt caught. Not trapped, not scared. Held. Wanted. Too wanted. Kairen's voice dropped. You're shaking. Eryx whispered, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Vaelen answered first, just stay. Kairen added, and feel. Eryx didn't know how they got so close. He didn't know how their warmth surrounded him like this. He didn't even realize his hand had squeezed Kairen's back until Kairen's breath hitched sharply. Vaelen watched that tiny squeeze like it was the most intimate thing he'd ever seen. Kairen whispered, see, you choose us without realizing. Eryx looked between them, voice trembling. I'm not choosing. Vaelen touched Eryx's throat lightly with 2 fingers, guiding his gaze back. You already are. Kairen's hand slid to the side of Eryx's waist, slow, warm, claiming. Eryx's heart was a wild, aching thing in his chest. And then, a sharp knock on the door. All 3 froze. Kairen swore under his breath. Vaelen leaned back with a frustrated exhale. Eryx scrambled to his feet, flustered beyond belief, almost tripping over the carpet as he rushed toward the door. Behind him, Kairen muttered something that sounded like, whoever that is, I hate him already. Vaelen added, make it quick. Eryx opened the door, and nearly died inside when his aunt stood there, smiling brightly. She looked past him, saw Kairen, saw Vaelen, raised an eyebrow, smirked. Oh, she said, you made friends. Eryx turned red from ears to neck. Auntie, we were... Kairen waved casually from the couch. Hi, ma'am. Vaelen nodded politely. Good afternoon. Eryx wished the ground would swallow him. His aunt whispered near his ear, you didn't tell me they were handsome. Eryx choked. Please go. She winked and left, laughing. The door shut. Eryx turned around slowly. Kairen was grinning. Vaelen looked calm again, but his eyes were darker than before. Eryx stood there, breath unsteady. Kairen patted the seat between them. Come back. Eryx whispered, you two are going to ruin my life. Vaelen said softly, Only if you let us. Eryx walked back toward them, not because he knew what he was doing, but because walking away felt impossible. And both of them watched him with the kind of hunger that made him shiver, the kind that promised this was only the beginning. Eryx sat down between them, heart hammering in a way that made every nerve in his body feel alive. Kairen draped an arm over the back of the couch, pressing a little closer than before, while Vaelen remained poised beside him, eyes fixed and intent, like he was memorizing every detail of Eryx's face. The tension in the room was thick, almost tangible, and Eryx felt it coil in his chest like a living thing. "I don't know why I feel like this," he murmured, almost to himself. Kairen leaned forward, brushing a strand of hair from Eryx's forehead with a careless intimacy that made Eryx's stomach flutter. "Feel like what?" Eryx swallowed, unable to put it into words. "Like I'm not supposed to be here. Like, I shouldn't want this." "You want it," Vaelen said softly, voice low and steady, "even if you don't admit it yet." Eryx's breath hitched. He wanted to argue, wanted to deny it, but the way Vaelen's eyes locked with his made him freeze. Kairen's hand slid down Eryx's arm, light but possessive, and Eryx felt a jolt run through him. "You're shaking," Kairen murmured. "Nervous?" Eryx blinked. Maybe." Vaelen's lips curved slightly. "Or excited?" Eryx's gaze darted between the two of them. The tension was unbearable, pulling him in two directions at once. He wanted to retreat, but every instinct in his body was telling him to stay, to let them hold him, to let them claim him, even if only for a moment. Kairen leaned closer, his thigh brushing against Eryx's. "See?" he whispered. "You can't walk away from us." Vaelen's hand found Eryx's, covering it with firm warmth. "And you don't have to, not if you don't want to." Eryx's chest tightened, his pulse raced. He had never felt this kind of closeness, this kind of attention, and it terrified him and thrilled him at the same time. You're too much," he whispered. "Not enough," Kairen countered with a teasing grin. Vaelen didn't speak, but the way he watched Eryx made the words unnecessary. His presence alone was a silent commanding claim. Eryx felt torn, overwhelmed by the heat radiating from both of them. He wanted to run, to hide, to resist, but a part of him, a small but insistent part, wanted to stay, wanted to let them touch him, wanted to feel their possession, wanted to let the tension stretch into something more. Kairen's hand slid up Eryx's arm, brushing against the soft skin near his shoulder. Vaelen's thumb traced idle circles over the back of his hand. Eryx's breath hitched, chest tightening, as desire mingled with fear. I don't know if I can," Eryx began, voice trembling. "You can," Vaelen said quietly, leaning in just enough that his breath brushed Eryx's ear. "You just need to let yourself." Kairen's smirk grew. "And we'll guide you." Eryx's knees went weak. He could feel the heat pooling in his stomach, a thrilling, terrifying ache. Every fiber of him was aware of both their touches, both their gazes, both their intent. He wanted them. He wanted them both. And the realization made his chest pound with an unfamiliar, dangerous rhythm. Kairen leaned in closer, his lips near Eryx's temple, voice low and teasing. "You know I could kiss you right now." Vaelen's hand tightened over Eryx's, a warning and a promise all at once, and I wouldn't stop him. Eryx's breath hitched, his mind spinning. He had never been wanted like this before, never been at the center of such intense focus, such fierce desire. He felt both terrified and exhilarated. And then, in a moment that felt suspended in time, Kairen's lips brushed against the side of Eryx's neck, light, teasing, and Vaelen's eyes darkened with a possessive intensity that made Eryx's heart leap. He was theirs, and he wanted to be, even if he didn't know how to admit it yet. Eryx's mind reeled as Kairen's lips lingered just above his collarbone, teasing and warm, while Vaelen's intense gaze never left him, holding him in place as if he could be claimed with nothing more than a look. His hands trembled slightly, caught between wanting to pull back and wanting to lean in closer, to feel the heat of both of them pressing around him. You're too close," he whispered, though the small quiver in his voice betrayed him. "Am I?" Kairen murmured, his lips brushing over the delicate skin near Eryx's throat. "Or are you just realizing how much you want this?" Eryx swallowed hard, breath hitching. I don't know." Vaelen's hand moved from Eryx's, resting lightly on his thigh, steadying him, grounding him. "And let yourself feel it," he said, voice low and commanding, pulling Eryx's gaze to his. "We won't hurt you. We just want you." Eryx's chest tightened at the word, wanted. Both of them wanted him. He could feel the truth of it in every deliberate brush of skin, every magnetic glance, every possessive shift in posture. And the pull between them was suffocating and intoxicating all at once. Kairen leaned even closer, lips hovering over Eryx's ear. "You're trembling. Is it fear? Or is it excitement?" Both," Eryx admitted, shivering. Vaelen's thumb brushed against Eryx's hand again, warm and steady. "It's fine. You don't have to decide anything right now." Kairen, however, pressed lightly against Eryx, making it impossible for him to step back. "But it's already happening," he whispered. "You're already here, with us." Eryx's pulse raced. He could feel their combined weight, their combined heat, their combined intent, pressing into him from either side. He wanted to resist, but every instinct screamed to surrender, to give in to the dangerous, thrilling tension. I don't know how," Eryx began, voice trembling. Vaelen silenced him with a soft but commanding look. "You just let us lead. Trust us." Kairen's hand moved to cup the side of Eryx's face, thumb brushing over his jaw. "And we'll make it worth it." Eryx's heart slammed in his chest as their closeness became unbearable. He wanted to pull away, and yet he couldn't. The intensity of their desire, their possessiveness, the heat radiating off both of them, it was too much. And he was too vulnerable, and the truth was undeniable. He wanted them, both of them. Finally, everything was out, done, and there was to be a way to different and firmer better. Them. He wanted to feel claimed, desired, and protected all at once. He wanted to feel claimed, desired, and protected all at once. He wanted to feel claimed, desired, and protected all at once, impacting all at its core. Vaelen leaned just enough to whisper, "You don't have to hide from it anymore." Kairen pressed a kiss to the side of Eryx's neck, slow and teasing, making the fine hairs along his skin stand on end. Eryx's breath hitched, and his hands went to clutch at their arms instinctively, grounding himself in the reality of being wanted. Eryx felt it curl inside him, a fire that both frightened and thrilled him. And in that moment, as he sat between them, he realized one thing with perfect clarity. He was theirs already, and he didn't want to be anywhere else. Eryx woke the next morning with a strange mixture of dread and anticipation knotting his stomach. The memory of last night lingered like a pulse under his skin, the feel of Kairen's lips teasing along his neck, Vaelen's steady, claiming presence pressing into him, the way both of them had wrapped him in a tension that had made his heart race and his thoughts scatter. He told himself it was just one night, a moment, nothing permanent, but the truth was harder to admit. He wanted it, wanted both of them, and the thought made him simultaneously exhilarated and terrified. By the time he stepped outside, he found Kairen leaning casually against the gate, one hand in his pocket, smirk already plastered across his face. Vaelen stood silently nearby, tall and composed, eyes following Eryx with a calm intensity that made his pulse jump. "You're late," Kairen teased. "Almost ruined our morning." I wasn't," Eryx began, but Vaelen's calm tone cut through. "You should move faster," Vaelen said, voice steady, almost dangerous in its quiet precision. "We don't like waiting." Kairen grinned wider. "He's been waiting all night for you, Eryx." Eryx felt his cheeks heat instantly. I didn't—" "You didn't what?" Vaelen asked, tilting his head slightly, eyes darkening in a way that made Eryx swallow hard. "You didn't think about us?" I can't stop thinking about you," he admitted, the words tasting strange and vulnerable on his tongue. Kairen chuckled softly, stepping closer until their shoulders brushed. "Good, because we can't stop thinking about you either." Vaelen's hand brushed against Eryx's wrist as they started walking, steady and deliberate. "You belong between us," he said, voice low and certain. "And we both know it." Eryx's pulse thundered in his chest. He felt trapped, and yet he didn't want to escape. Being pulled by both of them, claimed in their quiet, fierce ways, was overwhelming, but it was intoxicating. By the time they reached school, he was dizzy with a mix of nerves and desire. Every glance from Kairen made his stomach twist. Every silent, piercing look from Vaelen made his chest tighten. He had never felt so aware of himself, so exposed, so entirely the focus of two different, magnetic desires. During the first period, Eryx could barely concentrate. Kairen's knee brushed his under the desk once, making him jump, while Valen's eyes seemed to track every twitch, every small movement, every tiny reaction. He wanted to protest, to push them away, but the truth was undeniable. He craved both of them. Their attention, their possession, their tension that pulsed in the air around them. He wanted it all. Lunch was even worse. The moment they sat down, Kairen draped an arm casually over Eryx's shoulder, pulling him in slightly. Valen's gaze stayed locked on Eryx, commanding, claiming, unwavering. "You're quiet today," Kairen said softly. "Something on your mind?" Eryx shook his head. "Just thinking." Fierce, made it impossible to ignore that he was exactly where he was meant to be, between them, pulled in two directions, caught in a storm he didn't want to escape. After school, walking him home again, Kairen grabbed his hand, interlacing their fingers without waiting for consent. Valen's hand hovered near his other side, tense, ready to claim, ready to hold, ready to make sure no one touched him without permission. Eryx's breath hitched. He was aware of every touch, every glance, every unspoken word. The tension between them had grown thicker, hotter, more consuming. He could feel it coiling in his chest, a fire that both frightened and thrilled him. "Do you feel it too?" Kairen asked, voice low, brushing his lips against the shell of Eryx's ear. I think so," Eryx whispered, trembling. Valen's hand finally landed on Eryx's shoulder, firm, grounding. "Then you know," he said, eyes darkening, "that there's no going back." Eryx's heart leapt into his throat. He wanted to deny it, wanted to pull away, but the truth was simple. He didn't want to. He wanted both of them. And now he knew there was no choice in the matter. Eryx could feel the tension coil tighter the moment they reached his apartment. The air between them was thick, electric, alive, as if the walls themselves knew what was about to happen. Kairen leaned casually against the doorframe, smirk teasing at the corners of his lips, while Vaelen remained stoic, his eyes sharp, precise, unwavering. Both of them were watching him, and the weight of that attention pressed into his chest, making it hard to breathe. Eryx began, but Kairen interrupted, sliding closer until their shoulders brushed. "Shh, no talking, just feel." Eryx's stomach twisted. "Feel what?" Kairen's fingers found Eryx's, weaving through his hand with deliberate slowness, teasing, testing. "Everything. Every touch. Every glance. Every claim we make." Vaelen stepped even closer, heat radiating from his body in a way that was calm, controlled, and terrifying all at once. "You're ours, Eryx," he said softly, voice low and commanding. Not in words, not in promises, in presence, in everything. Eryx's breath hitched. He wanted to step back, but there was nowhere to go. Kairen's thigh brushed his as he leaned slightly. Valen's hand hovered near his waist, and suddenly he felt caught, claimed, and exposed all at once. I don't know if I can," Eryx whispered, voice trembling. "You can," Vaelen said, steady, deliberate, holding his gaze. "You just need to let yourself." Kairen leaned in, lips brushing along the delicate skin of Eryx's neck, teasing, warm, and impossible to resist. "See? You already want this. You're already here." Eryx's hands went to clutch at their arms instinctively, grounding himself in the reality of being wanted by both of them. The tension spiraled, thick and consuming, pulling at him in a way that made every nerve in his body ache. Valen's eyes darkened, possessive, as he spoke. "No one else touches you. No one else looks at you, not without permission." Kairen's thumb traced small circles on the back of Eryx's hand, gentle but claiming. "We're not asking for much, just you. Right here, right now." Eryx's breath hitched, chest pounding. He wanted to deny it, wanted to fight it. But the truth had already settled deep inside him. He wanted both of them, wanted the tension, the rivalry, the heat, the claim, wanted the way they consumed him, held him, made him feel alive and desperate all at once. Kairen pressed another light kiss to the side of his neck, teasing and careful, while Vaelen's hand found his shoulder, grounding him, holding him, commanding him to stay. I can't believe this is happening, Eryx whispered. It is, Vaelen said, firm, unyielding, and it's real. Kairen's lips brushed lower, soft and daring, and it's only beginning. Eryx shivered, caught between fear and desire, between retreat and surrender. The fire in his chest was unbearable, consuming, intoxicating, and he realized in that dizzying, terrifying moment that he would never want to escape. He was theirs. He wanted to be. Eryx sat frozen between them, every nerve alive, every pulse pounding. Kairen's lips lingered against his neck, teasing, daring, while Vaelen's hand rested possessively on his thigh, grounding him, claiming him without a word. The tension in the room was suffocating, thick and unyielding, a storm pressing into him from both sides, pulling him deeper into something he had never experienced before. "You're trembling," Kairen whispered, voice low, almost possessive. "Nervous or excited?" Eryx's breath hitched. Both, he admitted, words trembling, vulnerable. Vaelen's thumb traced small circles over the back of his hand. "Then let yourself feel it. We won't hurt you, not unless you want us to." Kairen chuckled softly, leaning in closer, brushing his lips over Eryx's jawline. "You don't even have to think. Just let us claim you." Eryx's hands went to their arms instinctively, gripping, holding, grounding himself in the reality of their presence. The heat radiating off them, the deliberate, dangerous way they surrounded him, made his chest ache, made his stomach twist. He wanted it. He wanted both of them. He wanted to be lost in this, to be consumed, to be theirs. Vaelen's eyes darkened, intense, unwavering. "Say it," he commanded softly. "Say that you want us, that you choose this, choose us." Eryx swallowed hard, voice trembling. I want you, both of you." Kairen's lips curved into a dangerous, satisfied grin. "See? You already have." Vaelen's hand tightened slightly on his shoulder, possessive. "Then don't call back. Not now. Not ever." Eryx's pulse raced, every breath shallow, heart hammering. He was caught in their orbit, their heat, their desire, their claim. He wanted to step back, but his body refused. Every nerve demanded to stay, demanded to feel, demanded to surrender. Kairen's lips brushed against the sensitive spot behind Eryx's ear, teasing, and Vaelen leaned closer, whispering softly, "You're ours, every part of you, and we'll make sure you know it." Eryx shivered, heat pooling in his chest, stomach, and limbs. He was theirs, every inch of him, every thought, every tremor of his body, already belonged to both of them. And the realization made his heart pound faster, mind spin, and desire burn hotter than anything he had ever known. He was theirs, and he didn't want to be anywhere else. The storm of tension, rivalry, and passion that had begun the moment they met had finally enveloped him completely. There was no escaping, no pretending, no stepping back. He had chosen them, as much as they had chosen him, and the fire between them was only going to grow hotter. Every heartbeat, every glance, every touch confirmed it. Eryx was theirs, and together they were unstoppable. The invitation came from Kairen, but Eryx could tell immediately that Vaelen had been involved, too. The message appeared on his screen late in the evening, right when he was curled up on his couch, replaying everything that had happened between them the past few weeks, the kisses, the jealousy, the breathless tension that always left him trembling. Pack for 2 nights. No excuses. We're taking you somewhere. Kairen. Under it, another message arrived a moment later. You deserve a break. Just come with us. Vaelen. Eryx stared at the screen for a long moment, heart pounding harder than it should. A trip. Overnight. With both of them. The thought alone sent heat crawling up his throat, a slow burn that made his hands shake. He typed a reply, deleted it, typed another, erased it again. In the end, he sent only a single word. Okay. When they arrived the next morning, Kairen leaned on the doorframe like he owned the whole building. Sunglasses pushed up into his hair, jaw sharp and annoyingly perfect. Vaelen stood beside him, hands in his pockets, eyes soft but intense, as if he could see right through Eryx's hesitation. Kairen grinned as soon as Eryx opened the door. "Took you long enough." Vaelen's gaze dropped to Eryx's overnight bag. Is that all you packed? I didn't know what to bring, Eryx said quietly, cheeks heating. Kairen took the bag from him with one hand, amused. Don't worry, we'll give you what you need. The words shouldn't have made Eryx blush as hard as he did, but Kairen noticed. He always noticed. Vaelen's eyes flickered to Eryx's face, softening even more, as if he wanted to reach out and brush his thumb over Eryx's cheek. They didn't tell him where they were going. The car ride was quiet at first, the kind of quiet that wasn't uncomfortable, but heavy, charged, every small movement echoing between them. Eryx sat in the back, but Kairen kept turning slightly to look at him over his shoulder, smirking whenever their eyes met. Vaelen drove, calm and steady, but Eryx saw the way his fingers tightened around the steering wheel whenever Kairen leaned too close to Eryx. Hours passed, roads narrowed, city noise faded. When the car finally turned into a long gravel path flanked by tall pine trees, Eryx leaned forward between the seats. Where are we? Kairen smirked. You'll see. The cabin appeared slowly between the trees, tall, modern, with huge glass windows and a balcony overlooking a shimmering lake. Sunlight broke across the water, scattering gold everywhere. Eryx stared, breath catching. This is secluded, Vaelen murmured. No neighbors for miles. Kairen added, no interruptions. The way he said it made heat pool low in Eryx's stomach. They climbed out of the car. The air was fresh, cool, carrying the scent of pine and lake water. Eryx looked around, overwhelmed by the beauty of it. The quiet, the space, the peace, and the sudden awareness that he would be alone here with both of them. Inside, the cabin was even more stunning. Warm lights, wood-paneled walls, a fireplace, and one large bedroom at the end of the hallway. Eryx stared at the single bed. Kairen raised an eyebrow at his expression. What, you thought we'd sleep in separate rooms? Vaelen walked past them, voice softer, but deeper. We didn't bring you here to be apart. Eryx's heart raced. He didn't know what they meant by that. Didn't know how far either of them wanted to take this. But his body reacted faster than his mind. A soft shiver running down his spine. They put their bags down. Vaelen opened the balcony doors, letting in cool lake air, while Kairen explored the kitchen like he owned the place. Eryx wandered to the balcony, breathing in the silent stretch of water and trees. It was almost unreal, too peaceful, too beautiful. A bit much? Vaelen asked quietly, standing behind him. Eryx shook his head. No, it's perfect. I just didn't expect that we bring you somewhere like this. Vaelen's voice was low, calm, but there was something else under it, something possessive, fierce. I didn't think I was. Eryx struggled for words. Worth all this. Vaelen's hand slid carefully, deliberately, onto Eryx's waist. You're worth more. Eryx swallowed, breath unsteady. A moment later, Kairen joined them, tossing an apple in one hand. I swear, I leave the two of you alone for 5 minutes, and you look like you're about to start something without me. Vaelen didn't move his hand from Eryx's waist. And if we were? He asked quietly. Kairen stepped closer, trapping Eryx between their bodies. Then I'd remind you he's not only yours. The air thickened instantly. Eryx felt Vaelen's grip tighten on his waist. Kairen's fingers lifted his chin. Their rivalry had never been subtle, but here, isolated, alone, no distractions. It sharpened, intensified, pulling all three of them into a dangerous, irresistible tension. This trip wasn't so we could fight, Vaelen murmured. Kairen smirked. It's not fighting, if he likes it. Eryx's breath caught, a soft, involuntary sound that made both of them freeze. Kairen's smirk deepened. Vaelen's eyes darkened. Eryx didn't know which of them leaned in first, didn't know who touched him, or how the heat rose so suddenly, so fiercely. He just knew that their closeness, their rivalry, the possessiveness burning in both sets of eyes, called him in so intensely he couldn't breathe. Kairen's lips brushed Eryx's cheek. Vaelen's breath slid warm against his neck. Two bodies against his, two hearts beating just for him. And the realization struck him hard, dizzying. There was no running from this, no pretending he didn't want both. No pretending they didn't want him just as desperately. The lake shimmered outside. The wind whispered through the trees. And in the silent cabin, Eryx stood caught between two boys who would burn the world down before letting him go. He shivered. Vaelen's fingers curled tighter. Kairen's lips lingered too long, and the night hadn't even begun. The late afternoon light softened into gold as it spilled across the cabin floor, turning everything warm and too intimate. Eryx could still feel their hands on him even after they stepped away. Vaelen's steady grip, Kairen's teasing touch, both of them burning into his skin. His heart was still racing, breath uneven, and neither of them pretended not to notice. Kairen leaned against the counter, watching Eryx like he was studying every reaction, every flinch, every shiver. "You should change," he said lightly, though the heat in his tone was anything but casual. "We're taking you down to the lake." Eryx blinked. "The lake?" Vaelen nodded, retrieving a towel. "It's warm out, and you need to relax." Kairen smirked, stepping closer. "We'll help you." Eryx's pulse jumped again at the way he said it. He turned away too quickly, grabbing the small bag he'd packed. The bedroom door clicked shut behind him, but even there, alone, he couldn't escape the lingering heat of their presence. He pressed a hand to his chest, trying to calm the wild rhythm of his heartbeat. He changed into soft shorts and a loose shirt, hesitating once he caught his reflection. His skin was still flushed, his eyes still wide. There was a fragile, almost breakable softness to his expression, like he was standing on the edge of something he didn't fully understand yet. When he stepped back into the living room, both boys went quiet in a way that made heat rush through his stomach. Vaelen's eyes swept over him slowly, darkening with something dangerously tender. Kairen let out a low sound. "You're doing that on purpose." Eryx blinked, confused. "Doing what?" Kairen stepped forward until Eryx was forced back a little, spine brushing the wall. The smirk faded into something sharper, deeper. "Looking like that." Vaelen stood beside him, voice soft but firm. "Let's go before Kairen forgets how to walk." Kairen shot him a glare, but it didn't last. His gaze kept drifting back to Eryx. The path through the trees was quiet, except for the crunch of leaves beneath their feet. Eryx walked between them, hyper-aware of how close they stayed. At one point, Kairen brushed the back of Eryx's hand with his fingers, and Vaelen's jaw clenched instantly, but he didn't pull Eryx away. They reached the lake, which shimmered in the fading sunlight, quiet and untouched. "This is beautiful," Eryx whispered. Kairen was already pulling his shirt off, stretching lazily. He knew exactly what he was doing. Eryx could see the smugness in his expression. Vaelen followed more quietly, more naturally, but when he stepped into the water, it was like watching tension melt off him. "Come on," Kairen called, splashing a little water in Eryx's direction. "Stop standing there like a painting." Eryx stepped hesitantly into the lake, gasping as the cool water wrapped around his ankles, then his knees. Vaelen reached him first, offering his hand wordlessly. Eryx took it, breath catching at how warm Vaelen was, even inside cold water. "You're shaking," Vaelen murmured. "It's cold," Eryx whispered. Kairen swam up behind him. "Is it? I'm perfectly fine." Vaelen shot him a look. "He's not you." But Kairen only smiled, sliding closer until his chest brushed Eryx's back. "No, he's softer." Eryx's breath hitched sharply. Vaelen heard it. Kairen felt it. The air between them thickened again, but this time it was wrapped in the silence of the lake, the gentle ripples of water, the distant sound of wind in the trees. Kairen's arms floated beside Eryx's waist without touching, hovering so close he could feel the warmth of them. Vaelen brushed a hand along Eryx's forearm, slow and deliberate. "Tell us if it's too much," Vaelen whispered. Eryx looked up at him, soaked lashes, trembling voice. "It's not." Kairen's smile turned almost proud. "Good." He moved in front of Eryx, water dripping down his cheekbones, eyes locked on Eryx's. "You still don't get it, do you?" "Get what?" Valen's chest pressed lightly against Eryx's back as he leaned in, breath warm even in the cold air. "That we brought you here for a reason." Kairen cupped Eryx's jaw gently, thumb brushing his lower lip. "So you stop running. So you stop choosing between us." Eryx's voice came out shaky. "I'm not choosing." "Exactly," Kairen whispered. Vaelen tilted Eryx's head slightly, voice low against his ear. "We don't want you to choose." Eryx froze, breath caught somewhere between fear and desire. Kairen's thumb traced his cheek. We want you, together. The meaning hit him like a wave of heat that swallowed every coherent thought. Eryx felt his whole body flush beneath the cold lake water, heart pounding so loudly he thought they could hear it. The lake was quiet, the world around them still, and Eryx stood between two boys who wanted him with a kind of hunger that made the water feel boiling hot. Vaelen's hand slid slowly up Eryx's arm. Kairen's fingers brushed his waist underwater. They were claiming him, together. Eryx shuddered, breath breaking into something helpless. Kairen smirked softly. There it is again. What? Eryx whispered. That sound, Vaelen murmured behind him. The one you make when we touch you at the same time. Eryx's knees almost buckled. Kairen exchanged a look with Vaelen. Rivalry still there, but something else layered on top of it. Something hungry and unified. Kairen leaned in first, lips brushing Eryx's cheek. Vaelen followed, mouth near Eryx's neck. 2 touches, 2 points of heat, one body trembling between them. Eryx didn't know what would have happened next, what they intended, how far they meant to take this. Because Vaelen suddenly noticed the way Eryx's breaths were getting too quick, too uneven. He pulled back, just enough to cup Eryx's face, his voice steady. Eryx, breathe. Surprisingly tender. We'll go slow. We have the whole night. Eryx's heart clenched painfully at the softness in their voices. The contrast between their usual intensity and the way they handled him now, as if he were something fragile and precious. They stayed like that for a while, in the water. Quiet, close, warm despite the cold lake. Eryx leaning back against Vaelen's chest, Kairen holding one of his hands underwater, the world around them fading into nothing. When the sun dipped lower and the sky turned dusky, Vaelen whispered, "Let's get you inside." Kairen's lips brushed Eryx's jaw once more before he pulled away. "Before you catch a cold, and blame me." They guided him out of the water, one on each side. Their hands stayed on him the whole walk back, not letting him slip, not letting him go, not even for a moment. And Eryx realized, with a thrill deep in his stomach, tonight was only beginning. The warmth of the cabin wrapped around them as soon as they stepped inside, a sharp contrast to the cold lake water still dripping from their bodies. Eryx shivered, not from the chill, but from the weight of everything that had happened. Every touch, every word, every charged moment that had built up like a storm waiting to break. Kairen closed the door behind them with a soft click, locking out the outside world. Vaelen draped a towel around Eryx's shoulders, his hands lingering longer than necessary, fingertips brushing the sensitive line of Eryx's collarbone, as if memorizing him. "You're freezing," Vaelen murmured. Kairen stepped closer, his own skin still damp. "He's shaking because of us, not the cold." Eryx looked down quickly, heat rushing to his cheeks. Kairen's smirk softened, losing its sharpness, turning almost affectionate. Vaelen guided Eryx toward the fireplace and switched it on, flames flickering to life in a soft glow that danced across the room. The warmth spread slowly, shadows deepening around them, wrapping the three of them in something private, something intimate. Eryx leaned into the heat, clutching the towel. Vaelen stood on one side of him, Kairen on the other, close enough to feel their body heat, close enough that his pulse sped up without permission. "Sit," Vaelen whispered, gently pressing Eryx onto the rug before the fire. Kairen knelt behind him, pulling another towel through Eryx's hair with slow, careful movements, more gentle than Eryx had ever seen him be. Vaelen sat in front of him, taking Eryx's hands to warm them between his own. "Your hands are cold," Vaelen murmured. Kairen leaned in, lips brushing the damp strands of Eryx's hair. "He's still shivering." Eryx swallowed, unable to look at either of them for long. Their closeness made his stomach twist, made his breath catch. There was no escape from the way they looked at him. Hungry, protective, and completely focused on him. Vaelen lifted Eryx's chin lightly. "Do you trust us?" Eryx's breath hitched, not because he doubted, but because of how easily his answer came. "Yes." Kairen's fingers froze for a heartbeat, then slid down Eryx's shoulder, slow and warm. "Then stop trying to hold your breath." Eryx hadn't realized he was doing that until Kairen said it. His lungs released in a shaky exhale. Vaelen leaned forward, brushing a stray droplet of water from Eryx's cheek. His voice dropped. Tonight, you don't have to choose who you let close. Kairen's hand slid over Eryx's hip, steady, careful. Because we're both right here. Eryx felt the room tilt, heat sinking into his bones as their words wrapped around him. Vaelen moved first. He leaned in slowly, giving Eryx time to pull away, giving him space to breathe. But Eryx didn't move. His eyes fluttered shut as Vaelen's lips brushed his, soft, warm, almost unbearably gentle. Vaelen kissed like he was afraid Eryx might break, like he wanted to memorize every second. Kairen's breath hitched behind Eryx, fingers tightening on his waist. "You're kissing him like you're scared," he murmured, voice low. Vaelen didn't break the kiss. "And you kiss like you're trying to set him on fire." Kairen smirked. "Maybe that's what he wants." Eryx's breath trembled at the sound of their voices trading over him, their rivalry shifting into something darker, shared. The mullet Vaelen pulled back. Kairen slid around to face Eryx, cupping his jaw with warm palms. "Look at me," Kairen whispered. Eryx did, and Kairen kissed him, deeper, hotter, stealing the air from his lungs. Kairen kissed like he wanted proof Eryx wanted him just as badly, like he needed to feel it. Eryx's fingers clenched against Kairen's shoulders, helpless to the rush of heat flooding him. Vaelen's breath brushed Eryx's ear from behind. "You sound beautiful when he kisses you." Eryx gasped softly into Kairen's mouth. Kairen pulled back only a little, forehead resting against Eryx's. There it is again. Eryx felt Vaelen's hands slide down his arms, grounding him, while Kairen tilted his chin up for another kiss. It wasn't chaotic, or rushed, or desperate. It was slow, burning, possessive. Kairen kissed him until Eryx was breathless. Vaelen held him until he stopped trembling. Eryx didn't know when it happened, but both of them ended up pressed against him, Vaelen behind, Kairen in front, their bodies caging him gently between warmth and steady, grounding pressure. Vaelen's lips brushed Eryx's shoulder. Kairen's mouth trailed along his jaw. Two different touches, different rhythms. One soft and controlled, one hungry and teasing, pulling him apart and piecing him back together at the same time. "Eryx," Vaelen whispered, voice rougher than before. "Tell us if we need to stop." Eryx shook his head instantly, breath shaking. "Don't stop." Kairen groaned softly. "You have no idea what you do to us when you say things like that." Vaelen's fingers traced slow lines down Eryx's sides, grounding him, even as Kairen tilted his chin for another deep kiss. The fire crackled beside them, shadows flickering across their intertwined silhouettes, painting warmth across skin and lips and trembling hands. Eryx felt enveloped, surrounded, claimed by both without being torn apart. Kairen's voice dropped lower. "You're ours tonight." Vaelen murmured against Eryx's neck. "If you want to be." Eryx didn't look away. "I want to." Two breaths caught at once, Vaelen's and Kairen's. One quiet, one sharp. The night deepened around them, and the tension that had been simmering for weeks finally snapped. Not into chaos, but into something slow, consuming, breathtaking. Kairen pulled Eryx into another kiss. Vaelen folded his arms around Eryx's waist from behind. And between the warmth of the fire, the closeness of their bodies, the soft sound of breath and lips and whispered names, Eryx realized he had never felt so wanted in his life. He melted into them completely, and neither of them let him go.